When we think of Celtic in Europe, the most enduring image, of course, is of Billy McNeill lifting the European Cup in 1967 on that never-to-be-forgotten afternoon in Lisbon. Or maybe we think of Tommy Gemmell's goal in the 1970 European Cup final, even though Celtic lost out to Feyenoord on that occasion. The fact is that since the glory days of Jock Stein's team, Scottish clubs have made very little impression in Europe, and Scottish football generally is held in pretty low regard on the European stage. So for season 2002-2003, the hope of Celtic fans was that the club could remain involved in European football after Christmas. That in itself would be a major achievement. But manager Martin O'Neill had made it his business to confound expectations since his arrival at Celtic Park in the summer of 2000. We all know how the story started to unfold. In his first season in Glasgow, O'Neill and the team brought home a domestic treble. This incredible feat, the club's first treble since 1969, gave warning that this was a man who could slay the dragons of the past. The team retained the league by a country mile in O'Neill's second season in charge. But future generations will surely argue that it was his third season at the helm which provided the greatest kudos of all for the club. In season 2002-2003, Celtic and their worldwide supporter base discovered that not only did their club have a glorious past, they had an exciting present and a very promising future as well. Celtic found themselves in the UEFA Cup, having been knocked out of the Champions League on the away goals rule by FC Basel of Switzerland. And for all that the UEFA Cup might be seen as a consolation competition, the first round was bristling with well-known European names. Lazio, Anderlecht, Sparta Prague, Paris Saint-Germain, Grasshopper, Malaga. Celtic clearly would face very tough opposition.
The UEFA Cup has a lot of very strong sides in it. And when we went out against Bâle, we were determined that we'd have to have a really good run in the UEFA Cup. I'm not saying we dreamed that we'd go all the way, but we knew it was imperative to try and progress and lay the ghost, if you like, of Bâle.
And the next day, when we lose from Bâle and we out, we know we're not going to play for the Champions League. And the next day for the training, we come back for the training and we're really down. And like a joke, I tried to say like a joke to the manager that now we can go and win the UEFA Cup, and nearly happened. Nearly happened.
Obviously, it was disappointing to go out at that stage of the Champions League to Bâle, but you know, it's still a UEFA competition when you're going into the UEFA Cup, and it's one that everyone wanted to progress in.
You know, the disappointment of going out to Bâle was a whisker of a postman, so he just missed that chance right at the end, and then went on to prove what a good side they were. You know, they knocked Liverpool out of the Champions League, and you know, they beat Juventus at home and Valencia. So, you know, it was no disgrace in the end to go out, but at the time you thought it was the end of the world, really.
33 years had passed since Celtic had last played in a European final. 23 years since they'd played in Europe beyond Christmas. So to reach the UEFA Cup final in 2002-2003 was a feat which eclipsed anything that O'Neill's men had achieved in the past. The first round of the competition, fortunately, posed few problems for the Hoops. Celtic Park was almost half empty. Just 36,000 fans welcomed Lithuanian Cup winners and veritable minnows, FK Sūduva, to Glasgow on a cold, wet September evening for the first hurdle on the road to sunny Seville. There had been some, frankly, ridiculous speculation before the tie that Celtic's Swedish hitman, Henrik Larsson, had perhaps lost the way to goal, given that it had been all of 2 games since he had last hit the net. Martin O'Neill was also erring on the side of caution and pointing out the danger of underestimating opponents in European competition. But all of this was forgotten as Celtic cruised to a 5-goal lead within the first half hour. In the process, a hat-trick from Henrik Larsson took his European tally to 21, equalling Ali McCoist's Scottish club record.
Larsson is inside, he's done it! Beautifully taken, and he has answered those people who felt he is in decline, and that's the only way as a player you can answer back, and he did it in the most spectacular way. Referee keeping his eye on that little knot of players in the middle. Who's going to get the touch? Is Henrik Larsson. That's his double. And you could tell from the moment he rose there with that elegant little turn of the head. That's all the economy of effort and the maximum of result. Oh, that's a glorious goal by Petrov. right out of the blue. It didn't look as if it was going to be at all dangerous for the defence. He leant back, and then all it was net man wallop. Guppy. Beautiful turn, and there's Larson again. He'll go, and it's in. No! He's claiming the goal, and I think it went in. Yes, it had crossed the line. There's his hat-trick. It didn't reach the back of the net, but the assistant referee away across in the corner had a very close look at this. There's a little dab over the keeper. The defender couldn't quite get it out. It had crossed the line. Celtic 4 up, Larson 3. Where goes Guppy? Plenty of space, nobody in front of him. Celtic flooding into the box. There's the ball across again, and again it's in. This time, coming right up in the back of it, Sutton. 3 of them into the box very quickly. The 5th goal, and coming when it does, I think we're in the process of an outright demolition.
I think Henry will fancy the direct shot, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's a touch for Petrov as well. He really has got power in that right foot.
We shall see. It is indeed, and the goalkeeper just gets down there, and it's in. Lambert comes up to finish it off. Sutton put it up well. Petrov, that must be this time, surely. Yes, Hodgson does it again. Off he comes the bench to score a goal, and this time with delightful poise, just dragging the goalkeeper towards him, keeping his head, and then sliding it away. Hartson's going to blast it, and he touches it over, and that is a goal by Yusuf Khaled.
You must remember that Celtic did the very first Sedubra game against the disappointment of elimination from the Champions League, in very narrow elimination. I remember that shot by Chris Sutton to this day that just shaved the post in the last seconds of the game in Basel, which would have put them into the Champions League. Therefore, the dressing room must have been down. They're only human. And yet they came back and just technically destroyed Sedubra. Okay, not the strongest opponents they were going to face in the entire tournament, but they went out and scored 8 goals. And Henrik Larsson showed that he hadn't lost his touch by scoring a hat-trick.
I think they were perfect, you know, for an early round team to play. They by no means stretched Celtic. Certainly Celtic adapted very well to the game here and made the return leg something that was very easy. But, you know, at that stage there was never any indication that Celtic were going to progress in the UEFA.
The first game here we won 8-1, and realistically it ties over then, and you go over there and just be professional as you can, and then go home, and then once we knocked them out, that's when it really started, really, you know.
After such an emphatic first leg victory, Celtic's top stars saw little reason to brave the onslaught of a Baltic winter, and the return leg 2 weeks later. Martin O'Neill sent out a virtual reserve team shored up by a few of the big boys to complete the job, which they duly did.
Lovely piece of interplay. Look at Healy flowing forward. There's a chance. David Fernandez, he's going to lob the goalkeeper, and it's in. This time it does count. A beautiful move by Celtic. They open the scoring, and although Fernandez has injured himself, with 12 minutes gone, an immaculate piece of play from midfield, and finished very coolly by a man who showed with Livingston he could do exactly that. Hodgson, Thompson, Maloney, very deep Maloney. Agat, dementing this man in front of him, he really is. Healy, now McNamara. Curving ball, Hodgson with his beady eye on, and that's a beautiful ball inside. That's it. Second one as Alan Thompson read that beautifully. I mean, you could see Hodgson looking at it, might have gone for himself, and all he did, nonchalantly, heading it down into the path of Alan Thompson.
Celtic versus Blackburn Rovers in a European tie is bound to induce a fair amount of excitement. In fact, any time a Scottish team meets their perceived betters, be it in a friendly match or a knockout competition, then there's bound to be a high degree of excitement. However, the fact that Rovers were managed by the charismatic former Rangers boss Graham Souness ensured that this particular match would be cranked up a few more notches than the average Scotland-England encounter. Souness, of course, had created the foundations of an Ibrox team that had dominated Scottish football for well over a decade until the arrival of Martin O'Neill. How fitting it was then that Graham Souness should return to Glasgow and once again try to make life difficult for Celtic.
We, as football people, obviously wanted to show how good Celtic were against the strength of the English Premiership, if you like, so they tell me. So it was a great draw for us. We were really confident that we could do well against Blackburn.
The game against Blackburn, you know, with them being an English side, you know, as you say, it was going to be billed as the Battle of Britain. But from a player's point of view, you know, it's just another side. They're a good side. We found it difficult, certainly at home at Parkhead against them. They had a lot of possession and they kept the ball well. But in the end, you know, we got a goal near the end through Henrik, and it's good to take a 1-0 into the second leg, but more importantly, not conceding any goals at home.
Blackburn arrived at Parkhead for the first leg on Halloween, but it was Celtic who got a fright as Rovers harried their opponents for great periods of the match and appeared to do everything right, except, crucially, claim an away goal.
Well, it started at one heck of a pace. It's like an Old Firm game at the moment, and they know all about that here. Here's David Thompson. He can strike them from distance, and that whistles past the right-hand post of Rab Douglas. Taking on Johansson, and that was Petrov, and what a good header and a point-blank range save from Stilian Petrov by Brad Friedel.
Well, Friedel played magnificently at Highbury and almost just picked it up where he left off. That was a magnificent save. Really the first attacking opportunity from Celtic. They carved them open. Good cross from Argat, and really Petrov, if he'd have probably headed it down, Friedel had no chance, but he just somehow got his arm to it, going the wrong way.
Now then, two-guy to Neil for Blackburn. Erstenstadt, it ran on a little bit here. David Thompson, good save by Rab Douglas.
Oh, what a boring start this has been, hasn't it? Fantastic stuff. Just a little deflection by Erstenstadt, took it and wrong-footed the defence. I think Thompson on his right foot would have scored, and his left just put it a nice height. Good save by Douglas, but one I would have expected him to make once you see the shot.
Duff. Oh, he's taking them on here, Damien Duff. Oh, and it was a decent-looking cross at first, but it was just too long, really. Little Thompson was the player furthest away from Duff on the far post. Two-guy. David Dunn. Oh, good effort, and Rab Douglas forced to turn it round.
Well, that's done at his best. Likes to play in the centre and get those shooting opportunities on his right foot. Hit it well enough, a nice height for Douglas, just got a touch, didn't it, deflection, so he didn't take any chances trying to catch it.
Taylor and Short have come forward. And this is done again. Another chance to shoot. And he won't hesitate, he's a good, strong performer, David Dunn. Local lad, as they say these days. Aren't many of those these days, are they? Come from Great Harwood near Blackburn. Andy Cole with the flick back. Oh, and David Thompson nearly capitalising. Good movement from Blackburn again. But Silla has made the break for Celtic. Just half stopped in his tracks there. He's got Hartson to his left. Nobody else much around at the moment. But this is Hartson. And that's been deflected. That's going to be a corner to Celtic.
There was an isolated break there, and Martin O'Neill getting everyone up, because if they could prize a goal, 1-0 would be a terrific scoreline when you think of what's gone before the previous 84 minutes.
Absolutely. So Thompson goes across to take the corner. Valheren's in the penalty area. And so are many others here. John Hartson up! Oh, what a save by Finland! Henrik Larsson was there! And Celtic have scored! Henrik Larsson has got the goal that means so much to Celtic on 85 minutes. Martin O'Neill's substitution pays off because of the presence, first of all, of John Hartson. This is a record-breaking goal for Larsson, but O'Neill knows it's the lead goal in the tie for Celtic.
I thought that Blackburn here at Celtic Park would probably have been disappointed by the result that night, because they did play very well. They controlled much of the game, they dominated much of the midfield, and it looked as though going down to Blackburn with only that one goal lead, that looked very, very slender at the time.
For Celtic, it had been a difficult evening, and more than one commentator suggested afterwards that had it been a boxing match, Rovers would have won on points. The thought certainly hadn't escaped Graham Souness, who publicly declared himself happy with the performance, if not the result, but privately told his players that he thought it had been men against boys. Blackburn midfielder Gary Flitcroft was helpful enough to report that quote to the assembled media, who were delighted to pass it on to Martin O'Neill.
I don't really want to say Graham Souness, I got a lot of respect for him. He's been a great player, but to say things like that, obviously it does build the other team up a little bit, but probably didn't help themselves really.
He maybe said something in the sanctity of his dressing room that one player come out and repeated to the press, which I'm sure Graham wouldn't have been happy with, because simply you don't want to give the other team your team talk, so that's why you can't go around and start slaughtering everybody, especially when a tie's not finished. And I think the lads took it to heart and were pretty wound up about it, the comments that were made.
I think when you hear comments like that from opposing players and managers, it's not something I would do, and I don't think it's something many people in our dressing room would do, if any, and certainly not the manager, is disrespect other teams. And I think to a certain extent Blackburn possibly did that, and it come back to haunt them, I think.
A lot of players in that Celtic team that night had made their names in English football. They were going back down to where they had proved that they could play at the top level, and I think they were out to prove a point, and they certainly proved it that night.
We were written off after the game here at Parkhead, which was nice for us really, because it really makes you want to show people what you are capable of doing.
And we went down there, and I think we proved to the British people or English people or whatever that Celtic could play, and it was a fantastic result for us. And I think that sort of helped set us on our way, gradually looking forward.
With Souness's controversial assessment of the first leg ringing in their ears, Celtic ran out at Ewood Park for the return leg 2 weeks later on a mission. It was as one-sided a match as you could ever hope to see at this level. Celtic really stamped their authority all over the tie.
Off the chest of Sutton to Lennon. Hartson. To his right, Agat. Still John Hartson. Lennon with Henrik Larsson waiting in the centre. This is Petrov. The touch by Henrik Larsson. John Hartson! Well, there was an interesting refereeing decision to be made there. I thought there might have been a foul in the build-up. Did he play an advantage, Trevor?
Yeah, he did there as he was knocked down there. I think it was Dwight York coming back. John Hartson, first touch let him down. He got just tucked under his foot then, and he just tried to chip it. I think that was pretty much impossible to do it from that distance there.
Not a lot of shape to the game so far, really. It's hectic. Lennon. He's trying to slow it down a bit. Balde. Agat, and now Chris Sutton. Can he? Oh, Hartson slipped. Oh, Henrik Larsson, surely for Celtic. Yes, he has. He has scored for the second time in this tie, Henrik Larsson, and he sends the green and white hoops into an orgy of delight with the vital, or could be, away goal for Martin O'Neill. Blackburn's defence were dreaming. and you can't do that against Henrik Larsson, a record goal scorer for Scottish clubs in Europe. He hasn't had many easier ones. Hartson caused trouble. Larsson was unmarked and took it tidily.
Well, when the ball was knocked in, I thought Sutton was playing it to Hartson, but they overhit it, they both slipped, and suddenly Larsson is clear. I thought that touch had taken it too close to the goalkeeper. I thought he was going to hit it early. Then you've got to say it was wonderful finishing, just to lift it over Friedel as it came out.
Yes, it was the opening itself that looked so easy because there were no defenders around, but how well he took advantage, Henrik Larsson, and his record now quite staggering. That was his 178th goal for Celtic in 225 games. What it means is Celtic are now 2-0 up on aggregate. They have the away goal. Blackburn have to score 3. Well, Celtic are picking up more or less where they left off. Henrik Larsson again. Well, that one just wide of Friedel's right-hand post. No change there, Trevor.
No, it's good play again. I mean, Guppy had got down the left-hand side, got behind Gillespie, who's not going to be the greatest defensive player. It's a good strike, but as always, I think just going to miss that near post.
Sutton backing off slightly now. And there is Sutton. Oh.
Well, yeah, probably Chris Sutton thinks he should have scored there. He worked so hard to get the open. Guppy, we know all about, terrific deliverer. Just gets the half a yard, just gets beyond the near post, and so he's got to glance it rather than get the power that he did. It went into the side netted. Just a faintest of touches, it goes into the net.
Scored plenty of goals at the Darwin end in his Blackburn days, Chris Sutton. Oh, look at Henrik Larsson here. He made that himself. Out to his left is Steve Guppy. Sutton's making his way into the penalty area now. Well, that's exactly where Celtic want the ball at this stage. Came off Gillespie. Petrov will go across to take the corner. In front of the Celtic supporters, who are having quite a night. Sutton! Oh, yes! On the ground where he scored so many for Blackburn Rovers, Chris Sutton probably settles this UEFA Cup tie for Celtic. It was the near post header. Blackburn had been warned. Look at these scenes of jubilation among the Scottish supporters. And this means now that Celtic have a 3-0 aggregate lead. Sutton's header, Friedel could only get a hand to it, and Trevor, Blackburn now need 4. It's impossible, isn't it?
Well, it is impossible, and what a terrific header that was. And remember the one we saw the other side where he just hit it too hard into the side netting. That time, that was the perfect glancing header. Just really didn't take the weight off the cross at all, just glanced it on target. Friedel couldn't react in time. A brilliant header, and no one's deserved it more. Not a surprise now to see Lambert come on, and Hartson, the attacker, then goes off having done an excellent job.
Celtic win the Battle of Britain, and they win it by a distance. 1-0 at Celtic Park, 2-0 at Ewood Park. O'Neill has time to sign an autograph before congratulating his team, who have excelled themselves here. The former Blackburn player, Chris Sutton, with the second goal. Even the Blackburn supporters moved to applaud the performance by the Scottish champions. Henrik Larsson scored in both matches. That's a routine performance for him, really, but he and Chris Sutton acknowledging the contribution of the Celtic fans. And those scarves raised to denote that this was a complete, all-round, convincing performance by Celtic, who, having won the first leg marginally, win the second leg convincingly.
The Celtic supporters delighted in reminding Graham Souness of his misjudgment about their team from the first leg as they ran out comfortable 3-0 aggregate winners. The Battle of Britain had been won, but it was only the prelude to a more significant cross-border raid to come.
Well, the interesting thing about the Blackburn game, of course, was that Martin O'Neill decided to attack. He had the 3 men up front, well, Sutton just in behind Henrik Larsson and John Hartson, and that proved to be very, very successful. First of all, the elusive quality of Henrik Larsson, which we know all about, and then John Hartson coming into the reckoning, being able to hold balls, be very powerful, and of course Sutton, who can pick up goals, especially in the air, as he eventually did. But again, the constant threat of Henrik Larsson, you could see in the way they tried to defend against him. He is a loser, the word I used, and he picks up the half chances as he did in that game when the defender slipped, as we remember. And then at the end, when it looked as if Celtic might yet be pulled back because they were still a dangerous team occasionally,